everybody. I'm Regina Bryant, and welcome to the Women of Empowered Living. I have to say, we are all so excited around here for the program that has already taken our community by storm, the Brain Revolution. This project officially launches on April 10th, and it brings together two giants in the field. We've got Dr. Daniel Amen and Joseph McClendon III. Dr. Amen is America's most popular psychiatrist. He's a New York Times bestselling author and expert in all things brain health. And if you're like me, you've seen every single one of Dr. Amen's PBS specials. And then there's Joseph McClendon. He is an expert in neuroscience, a performance specialist, and he's been the right-hand man to Tony Robbins for well over 2 decades. So we are truly excited about this program coming here to Empowered Living. And today I have the most special guest to talk with me and all of you about the Brain Revolution. She is a super coach with Dr. Daniel Amen and one of my favorite new people, Fallon Jordan. Hey there, Fallon.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is so amazing.
Oh, thank you for being here. Did I see a little something else, maybe a cat?
He's pretty much in all of the videos that I do. It's just
we welcome him to the Women of Empowered Living. Him, right?
Yes.
Okay.
His name is Archer, after any man that can use a bow and archer and hunt, because I think that that's kind of the cliche.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And we're always excited when any type of male joins our show. So that's really exciting to have Archer here. Fallon, how are you today? And where in the world are you?
I am amazing, thank you. And I'm in Atlanta. I've been here for 13 years. I am a New Englander, but I love it here. I was definitely meant to be in the city and in the sun and lake, mountains, all that fun stuff that we got here.
I'm so glad that you're here because, like I said, you're one of my favorite new people. And I couldn't think of a better person for today's show as we go into the launch of the Brain Revolution. Talk to us. You've had a front row seat for the creation of this program. So talk to us about what makes this program so special and why so many of us as coaches and speakers, a lot of our community, of course, is. Why might we want to be involved?
Well, the brain is the most important organ in our body. And for some reason, it tends to be one of the last that we ever look at. And we typically don't look at it until we're having really severe problems. So through everything that I've learned in the brain health coaching course and everything that Dr. Amen and some of our other Amen Clinics physicians have been kind enough to teach me, everything starts with the brain. And when your brain works right, you work right. And
love that.
I know. And the cool thing is, I mean, you can start working on your brain health at any age. You know, I've worked with clients as young as age 4 up until, in their late 90s. So when you're talking about this organ that is the most important, that's in charge of your life and how you think and how you feel and how you behave, there's no reason for us not to look at it and see what we can do to make it better, which is so many holistic things, and working with amazing coaches like yourself on the psychosocial spiritual piece. And then throughout this course, you're going to learn about all of the things related to biological health that you might have been missing.
That's exciting. I've already told my chiropractor. I told him that I was going to be a part of this Dr. Amen program that was all about brain health. And he was so excited. He was like, come on, bring it into the practice. I can't wait to talk with you about this. So when I say excitement in the community is high, it is off the charts. We are all eagerly awaiting April 10th for the big launch. Now, tell me, Fallon, you are an Amen super coach. How did you get there? And where did you start?
So figuratively, I actually started up the front desk at the Atlanta Amen Clinic. I know. And I just fell in love with what we do. And to me, it just made sense. It was answers that I'd had to questions my whole life about why people think and say and do certain things and why other people don't. And just always feeling we were missing something. And it was the brain. And the more I dove into everything that we do to help our patients, the more I was like, I need this, and everyone I know needs this. So
now, let's back up for 1 second. How did you get a job? Because you were the receptionist at the Amen Clinic here in Atlanta.
Yeah, so I just woke up one day and received a message from God that I needed to find a job on Craigslist in my field, which at that point I didn't believe in God. At that point, I didn't have a field because psychology and neurology didn't interest me because of what I know now. We were missing the most important piece, which is looking at the organ that we're treating. And so working at the front desk and getting so attached to these amazing people that were coming to see us, I just wanted to do more to support them. So I kind of slowly made my way up into different clinical roles in the company. And then about a year and a half ago, I went to Dr. Amen and was just like, I need to do something else. I need to do something bigger. I need to feel like I'm helping more people. So if I'm helping a coach like you implement the brain health protocols into your practice, and you're helping 50 people, that makes me feel like I'm helping 51 people. And so it was really cute when I was sitting down with him and we were kind of going over the new job description, because this is a job he created for me. And I just am so grateful. And I absolutely love and adore him more than you could imagine. And like, well, what should the title be? And I was like, I don't know. What do you think? He's like, super coach. And when he gets serious, like he has this look on his face. And I was like, yes, I love it.
I love it. Just like you're a superhero. And I guess that's how you feel when you get to work with us who are coming on board as coaches to bring this body of work to our clients. And certainly we're going to feel like superheroes. So you're the go-to person then. When those of us who come and we participate in the certification, we're going to get to work with you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm excited about that. So not only have you had this work relationship with Dr. Amen, you also have been on the patient side of things. So you've had a few brain scans.
A few, 5.
You've had 5 brain scans, and we all know that no one has seen more brain scans than Dr. Amen. His clinics are world renowned. Everybody knows that that's the place you go for a brain scan. What prompted you to get that first scan? And tell us when that was.
It was just a few months after I started, and I've been with the company over 8 years now. And it's something that, we offer to the employees, and there's a lot of amazing things they do offer us. And I've always just kind of jumped on whatever opportunities they're giving me. And unfortunately, at that point, I didn't realize how anxious I was. And so when I got my first scan, I was so anxious and paranoid that I thought they wanted to look at my brain to see how bad it was so that they could fire me. And I mean, it was an overwhelming job, right? Like trying to do the admin stuff while giving people this care and attention that they desperately need. And so it kind of made sense. But then when I saw the scan and it looked like the typical PTSD pattern that Dr. Amen talks about, I was like, whoa, like I got a lot to do. First of all, I need to understand that I have PTSD. Right. I need to understand that I have anxiety. I've been labeled ADD and depressed most of my life, but I didn't really know about the other pieces. And then of course, all the concussions.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, because you said so many interesting things about this first scan. Where were you in your life when you decided to get that first scan? I mean, you're an employee, so you're like, sure, it's a great perk. But were you someplace in your personal life where you thought, I need to maybe find out what's going on?
Yeah, it was not good. I was drinking a lot, smoking a lot, still kind of occasionally using recreational drugs. I was living in a really bad part of town because that's all that I could afford. I was in a relationship with a married man and just a lot of not good things. And looking back, I mean, the signs were there, especially doing clinical histories with patients and learning their life stories. I saw all the warning signs so early of like, this is where I would be headed if I don't start getting my life together. And when I saw that image of the organ that is in charge of all of my decisions, right, and my self-esteem and all of those things, I was like, okay, so there's a reason why I've made these decisions, but through the psychosocial, spiritual work that I know I can do and still work on every day and will be working on for the rest of my life, I don't have to live this way. I can have self-worth. I can have good relationships. I can have a good relationship with my brain and my body. I can stop self-medicating. I can do all the things that Dr. Amen is so wonderful and explains to everybody. And I really got to hear that in my voice. And then every time after that, I would hear him speak. It would just, it was like impossible for me not to get emotional and tear up, because I'm just like, you're helping me and you're helping all these people I meet every day in the office. And it's just such a beautiful thing that he's doing. And, you know, he's been doing it for a long time, but now when we get to work with more people and get this message out, I'm just so excited because I want to walk down the street and people say, what do you do? I can tell them and then have somewhat of an idea of what I'm talking about versus now I have no idea what I'm doing. So
that first brain scan, that alerted you to depression and anxiety, which I guess you already knew you had, and PTSD. What was the explanation behind the PTSD? Do you understand that now? And did you understand it at the time?
At the time, if you had given me a checklist, like we give all of our patients and symptoms of PTSD, yes, I had them, but like I had never seen anybody that would have given me that kind of checklist because I was so anxious and paranoid and scattered that me wanting to go see a professional for help was just completely out of the question. And so, and Dr. Amen and I have talked about this, and it's on the Amen Clinic's website. It's a really cool story for especially women that have ADD or have been told they might have ADD or know someone with ADD. My ADD was lifelong. I mean, from the second I was born, I had ADD. And then that kind of morphed into depression, which morphed into poor decision making, which then the impulsivity just really reared its head in high school. And then I had my umpteenth concussion. And then from down, you know, from 16 on, it was just kind of like, you know, a classic mess of ADD, depression, anxiety, PTSD.
So you had that first scan and you find out these things. What were those next steps? What did they say? Okay, we're looking at your scan, you've got this, and they sent you to do what after that?
So the supplements is definitely the first thing. And then doing the labs because of the way that how concussed my brain was caused damage to my pituitary gland, which is responsible for your hormones, which explained a lot of my issues with weight and erratic moods. So I did bioidentical hormones. And then that's when I was like, okay, what's the next step? And I worked with one of our Atlanta Amen Clinics doctors. And I was like, okay, like I have to go to therapy. Like I have to start doing this work if I really want to feel better and not slip back into old destructive patterns.
So your brain scan, that first scan led you not only to supplements and some other work, it led you to give therapy a shot.
Yeah, it was actually my second scan because I saw that it was getting better. Yeah, scan number 2 after just the supplements. And I was like, okay, I need to do more. And yes, my cortex, so the outside where you're supposed to get blood flow equally everywhere, was better. But my inside, my activity was still PTSD because I wasn't doing anything to treat it. Wow. And, I mean, I just had another appointment with my therapist yesterday. Like I've been working on this for a really, really long time, and I'll continue to do it because I need to. You know, we're very complex beings, and, you know, I like to think of myself as a divine being first and a human being second. And we're talking about the brain and the power of the ego and the subconscious mind and all of our experiences before age 7, like all of those things that I've learned in therapy. I need to apply them, and I need to continue doing this work so that I can be, you know, a cheerleader and educator for other people. And
I mean, you're a real product of the product. We say that a lot on the John Maxwell team, being a product of the product, and you truly are. So what was the gap of time between the first scan and the second scan?
It was only 3 months. It was a really short amount of time.
And did you notice when taking the supplements, because I guess that was first step after scan 1, did you notice an improvement after taking the supplements?
Absolutely. And at that point, again, I was still too anxious to show it to one of the doctors. I just used some of the brain assessments that we have to give myself a recommendation, and they were very helpful. And when I went to the doctor, he said, this is what your brain needs, but your brain also needs a lot of other things that we need to measure with labs. So vitamins, minerals, and hormones and toxicity and those kinds of things.
Wow. And then it was after scan 2 that you went to therapy, and you're still in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a third scan. How long after the scan number 2 did you have scan number 3? This is fascinating to me.
Yeah, that was a little bit later. That was about a year or 2 later.
Okay.
And that was actually, so at the clinics, we do the SPECT scans. So SPECT is single proton emission computed tomography. We do one at concentration, and then we do another at rest, so we can see the difference. And someone with ADD, it's crucial to see the difference between those two. So my third scan was my first resting scan, and it was almost like seeing my scan for the first time, because my brain at rest was even busier than my brain when I was focusing, which explains why when I don't stay busy, I get into trouble, whether it's inward or outward. So that's when I was like, wow, okay, what I'm doing is helping, because my brain would have only looked more active if I hadn't started doing this work, but like I really need to do even more than I thought I did.
And you just mentioned two different kinds of scans. You wanted resting and
concentration.
Concentration. Talk to us. Let's take a little sidebar and talk to us about the difference between those scans. And is that something we could expect if I wanted to go into the clinic here in Atlanta? Is that what I would do?
Exactly. Yeah. So we typically do them back-to-back days, but it doesn't have to be. It just has to be 24 hours apart. So you would do a very specific kind of tedious task on the computer, and then we would look at your brain to see what your brain activity looks like when you were focusing on that task. And then the second day, you're asked to just be left alone with your thoughts, which again, if I had like thought of it abstractly before, I would have been like really scared to see my resting scan. But you know, I had to do it as it was meant to, which, you know, is great, because I never really had that grasp on life before, just kind of knowing things happen in divine timing, and to just
that is incredible. So after scan 3, what were some of the things that this is so fascinating to me. I'm like, how many scans can I get? What did you notice after scan 3 that had improved in your health or your life? Because at this point you'd had therapy for a little while, you're working on the third brain scan. So what was starting to happen for you?
My brain was getting much better. And there were a lot of things in my life that were better, like my mood is better, my focus is better, but it's also living my purpose and mission and feeling like I belonged for the first time in my life. So there was a lot of really beautiful things about it, which is why it's so important to think of health as bio, psychosocial, spiritual. And when we're talking about the bio, we're talking about the brain, but we're looking at other biomarkers. And so that's when I decided it was time to work with one of our functional medicine doctors and get to the bottom of some other things that were going on. And, you know, I still had very high titers for Epstein-Barr, which is mono, which I had when I was 16. This was, you know, 12 years later, and I still had symptoms. And mercury.
Still had symptoms of Epstein-Barr from 12 years ago, 12 years prior to that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was validating. The mercury and lead toxicity. So days that I literally felt like I was walking with lead in my shoes, I kind of was. And then just my hormones being all over the place. So that was like a whole nother intense treatment plan that I had to do. But that was really what got me to the next level of healing, alongside the trauma therapy and then the hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you've just given us a mouthful, because as women, you know, a lot of us at different stages, I know you're middle 30s, I'm middle 40s, and earlier in life and later in life, we have all these ups and downs with our weight. And sometimes even diet and exercise, you can't quite pinpoint what's going on.
Right.
So you're saying through the brain scan, that's what led you to understand what was going on with your hormones, that allowed you to deal with weight issues and just overall body issues.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize when you have a concussion, it can hurt your pituitary gland, which then affects your hormones. So especially if you think of our NFL players, a lot of them are overweight. And it's because the testosterone are just not functioning at all. And it's because of all of the repetitive head injuries that they've had.
So wait a minute, I have to slow you down on that one.
Yeah.
Because I know on one of the calls the other day that we have, because Dr. Amen's been a future-proof expert, and he was saying that some of his clients are NFL players.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, I mean, my mind is racing. The information that's packed in your brain that you're sharing with us is awesome. So the reason why NFL players are overweight, and we see a lot of them that are overweight, is because of the repeated concussions that they've suffered. And that's having an impact on their pituitary.
Yeah. In my education for Dr. Amen, more or less, that's what it is. Because it's not just your hormones, what you think of as like testosterone, thyroid, like I was saying before. And then for women, definitely progesterone, pregnant alone become an issue. But for them, vitamin D. So vitamin D is actually a neurohormone. And so it's extremely important to take really high doses of vitamin D regularly, but especially if you've had a concussion, because that can throw everything out of whack. And that can definitely have an effect on weight and things like that, because vitamin D is fat soluble. So everything you've learned about fats from, a few decades ago when it was told to be a bad thing, your brain is fat and water. And the two most important things for it to have are healthy fats and water. So you have to have the vitamin D, which is fat soluble, with the omega-3s, and then the water, and just, making sure that you're doing that every day.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there is so much that our brain reveals to us that's going on with our entire health. So you had brain scan number 3, and then what was the gap in time between 3 and 4?
That was a couple of years. That was probably my longest one. And I think it's because I really wanted to see the improvement. But
so what were you doing? What were you doing between those that led you to say, now, after this time of supplements and everything else you were doing, that led you to number 4? You also mentioned hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, so hyperbaric oxygen, it's like a little tent that you lie in, and it gives you highly pressurized oxygen. It's one of the most amazing tools on the planet. It's safe for almost everyone to use. And because it's improving oxygen to your brain, it can help with anything related to your brain. So mood, focus, memory, pain, arthritis, all of those things, super important. And then I had finished several sessions of brain spotting, which was one of the trauma therapies that I did. And that helped bring my PTSD pattern down to almost non-existent.
Did you know you had PTSD? Was there something in your past, or was that revealed from the scan?
It was revealed from the scan, and then education around the fact that we all have trauma and you can't compare traumas. And that was the hard thing for me to realize. Is it's one thing for someone to molest me, but it's one thing to know that somebody else was repeatedly raped. And so I didn't think that I could say that I had PTSD because I didn't have something severe like that. And then throughout the course of all the work that I've done, I've realized, and even last night, like there was like another thing that came out, and it's like, there's a lot there that I need to process.
Wow.
Experience. I mean, it's kind of hard being human in this body on this planet, especially in this time. And, we're just very complex, and there's always going to be things that help and hurt us to get to the place where we need to be. And I always want to do that.
This is incredible. And so when was your last scan? When was scan number 5?
That was about 16 months ago.
Okay. And what improved, or what was different maybe that you noticed between 4 and 5?
So my cortex was almost completely healed. I still had a baby little nugget right here, which you can see on my talk with Dr. Amen, which is my ADD, which now my ADD isn't causing me major life problems and a lot of money. It's just helping me focus my time and energy on the things that I'm meant to do, which is my purpose and mission, which is to be cheerleaders and educators for people to know that there's always hope that they can improve their lives. And it starts with the brain. And so that was there. But then my PTSD pattern kind of flared back because I had just come out of a bad relationship. And so that's when I was like, that was really 16 months ago. And, that's when one of the biggest blessings of COVID is I've had so much more therapy than I've ever had before. And I'm just like, we just need to nip this in the bud. Like, I don't want to learn this life lesson again. Like, I want to these type of men, like, what do I need to do? And so that's what we work on.
And you mentioned earlier that at the time, I think when you first started working for Dr. Amen and had that first scan, paranoia, and you didn't have a sense of faith. For you, you didn't believe in God. Only if you're comfortable, what has changed in the spiritual realm for you?
Everything. I mean, it's still so funny that like I had such a clear message, and, I always knew that there was other things. I just didn't know what the other thing or things were that made me know that there's a reason why I'm here. And there's a reason why I'm in this body with this family, with this story. And thankfully, a lot of my friends have been the main people that have helped me with that. A lot of them that are therapists, a lot of them that are Amen affiliates. So just really like learning more about myself, and again, like being a divine being first and a human being second, and what that means. And I was just in such a dark place for so long. Like I just thought the world was evil, and I thought the world was completely bad. And I felt like everybody was out to hurt each other to get what they want. And that's not the truth. And the more I've grown into myself, the more I grow into the right communities where I'm with people. And, most of the time I have my intuition to tell me when someone's not really in line with where I'm at, which is my relationship with God is the most important thing to me. And I have to have conversations about that multiple times throughout my day just to keep me on track, because that's really what it's all about.
It's extraordinary just how far you've come from your beginning days at the Amen Clinic, that first scan, all the way to scan 5, which was 16 months or so ago, therapy, all the things that you've done in your life. So now as I told you before when we were chatting, I cannot wait to have my brain scanned. And okay, I can't wait and I'm scared all at the same time. So for those of us that know Dr. Amen's work with brain scans, heard your story, what am I to expect? How do I prepare, and how do I just prepare for this whole journey of not just the physical going into the clinic to getting the scan? I think what makes me nervous and what might make other people nervous, as excited as we are, is what comes after that. I mean, how do we prepare emotionally and mentally for this?
Well, for me, it was really just, I need to see a picture of this organ that is responsible for a lot of the things that I do and don't do, and comparing it to a healthy or normal, and me just being like, I want to look like that. What do I need to do to get there? And I think a lot of people are scared that their brain is going to be so bad we can't fix it, which is completely untrue.
That's exactly what the fear can be.
Yeah. And I was more on that side than the other, which is my brain is going to be perfect and I'm just crazy. That's true. We're all kind of in the middle. And because the brain heals so quickly, if your brain scan looks worse than you're thinking, that has nothing to do with the fact that you might not be a happy, highly functioning person right now. It's just giving us a heads up, because we can see dementia-like patterns 20 years before symptoms.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You can see dementia-like patterns 20 years before?
Correct.
That is worth getting a scan in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. That is worth it for just that one thing alone. My mother-in-law had Alzheimer's.
That's why everyone needs a brain scan, unless you don't care. I mean, I know people that have come through because they were dragged in and their scan wasn't good and they didn't care. And they said, I'm not doing anything. And that's their decision. I personally, that's the one way I don't want to go. And I don't want anyone in my life to go that way. So it's just extremely painful. I'm sure, losing someone, what that's like. And I don't want to go through that again. That was too hard.
That is a miracle that this scan can help us detect dementia, early Alzheimer's, because it is a devastating illness. I didn't even really get to know my mother-in-law. When I met her, she already couldn't speak. She already couldn't, feed herself, clothe herself. She was in a nursing home, getting full-on 24-hour-a-day care. It was just devastating for the family. Mm-hmm. And if this scan can help us prepare for that, know that, I'm going to be first in line. I'll tell you that. Me and my husband, we are going to be first in line. We're getting a scan. And you've been a big part of helping me realize that. So for the actual scan, how do I prepare? How long is it?
So you're actually in, and I say in, I'll explain what that is, because it's not in like an MRI, or they probably wouldn't have got me in there. You're just lying on a table comfortably, and the camera just kind of moves around your head. Very comfortable. You just have to lie still for about 20 minutes. No caffeine before. So if you need your morning coffee, I recommend doing your scan earlier in the morning so you can have your coffee after. It's really easy. I mean, like I said, we have 4 and 5-year-old kids come through, and, there's a tiny IV for the radiation. It's technetium. And it's a lot of people just in and out, not a big deal. Easy as part of the process. It's the other psychological and neurocognitive assessments that tend to be more difficult. But I wanted to say one more thing that's really important. So at 28, I had several risk factors for dementia on my SPECT, but then using the Bright Minds assessment that Dr. Amen talks about, I had even more because that's based on the biomarkers. So the Epstein-Barr, the bad hormones, the toxicity issues, the insulin issues, PCOS, and all of those things increased my risks extremely high at, late 20s, early 30s. So this isn't just something that you need to be thinking about if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s. This is something that you can get assessed now. That's so cool. That's one of the coolest things about what we do is some of the healthiest people I've ever met in my life were our patients, and they learned so much about some of the things that they had for missing pieces, even though they were seeing some amazing doctors that knew to measure a lot of the things. It's just they weren't measuring all of them and they weren't doing a SPECT.
It almost seems incomplete as I listen to your story, and thank goodness you got started at such a young age in your 20s with all of this, and how your life has just been, just made this dramatic turn. It seems incomplete to go get a physical or to work on any long-term type of health goals and programs without having a brain scan.
I mean, that's my mission, and that there's a lot there we could talk about offline with just insurance, pharmaceuticals, that kind of stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, this should just be a routine thing that you get every year, just like your echocardiogram, just like your blood work,
mammogram, everything. This should fall in line as one of those pieces of yearly health.
Yeah, we need to look at it. You don't know if that car accident where you burn a fender bender at 25 miles an hour, that could have impacted your brain. You could have a brain injury and not know it. You might not see or feel like you have problems until years later. And if we're getting these regularly, we'll catch everything. Because TBIs, if you go down the rabbit hole of TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, concussions, in the emergency room, I mean, it's a huge epidemic. It's an extremely huge problem. Dr. Sue Wolf and I did a video on my Facebook page about it, and she's kind of like the TBI expert, and the facts and figures that she has are astounding.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this has opened up a whole new just interest. This has opened my mind to, oh my gosh, we have a missing piece in our lives. Sometimes, why are things so tricky and difficult? And we'll go to our doctors, and you're not quite there yet. This scan, being a part of the brain revolution, could really be the missing piece for so many of us. You have shared so much about your life and going through these scans.
Well, and at the end of the day, you need to think of your doctor the way that they started medicine, thousands of years ago. First, do no harm.
Yes.
They were hired by you to keep you well. So you only paid your doctor when you were well. The system is not that way now.
No, it's not.
Trust me, you can imagine what it's like me trying to hire a doctor, which there's a reason I only work with our Amen doctors. And I'm an advocate for pretty much anyone I meet to remind them, you're paying them to make you well. And if they're not making you well, find a new doctor or educate them about what we're trying to accomplish. And if they're not supportive, then there's no reason for them to be on your support team.
Oh my gosh, you have just opened our minds to a whole new way of looking at health and medicine and our brains. It's great to hear from Dr. Amen, right? I mean, I watched him on PBS even this past weekend, and I love him and I love Tana. And yet when we get to hear from you, you're kind of a regular person like us. And, they're like, oh, that's Dr. Amen. You're Fallon, and you've shared so much of your story with us that we can see ourselves in the weight gain. We can see ourselves in, did I have an illness in my teens that I'm still dealing with now? Did I have some kind of trauma in my life that hasn't healed? So your sharing today, you have blessed me personally. When we've chatted here and offline a couple of times, your story has blessed me, Fallon. Meeting you has made an impact already in my life.
I really appreciate you saying that. So sweet. And I mean, and I tell people this all the time, what I learned is just from being in the clinics as a patient outcome manager and reading treatment plans and having patients ask these really simple questions that were normal to ask, such as, why does my neurologist want to dismiss me as a patient because I went to see you because they think that this is voodoo? And me having to fight back with the data, which is, we've done 175,000 SPECT scans. Nobody on the planet gets a SPECT scan without using our database to interpret it. It can show why you're suffering, rather than shooting in the dark with dangerous medications. It could cause you to kill yourself or other people, or lose quality of life very slowly without even realizing it. And next thing you know, your marriage is falling apart. This is so important, and you need to think of who you're hiring to take care of you. And that was so much of what I did for 7 years.
Wow.
Especially my dementia patients. I mean, they were my favorite to work with, and they had been through so much recent trauma, seeing the wrong healthcare professionals that were telling them, this isn't important, this isn't going to help, this isn't what you need to do. When to me, yes, I have the science, and, you know, I'm like the biggest spokesperson for what we do, but just as a person, why wouldn't we try? What's the worst that could happen? You could get better.
I mean,
It makes no sense to me.
It's astounding what we can learn, how we can grow and be healthier by having a brain scan. And I remember the story that Dr. Amen and Tana shared about her dad's misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
And how they brought him to live at their home and gave him a quality of life in his remaining years that was high, that people didn't think he could have. That's the power of this. You know, I love to wrap up all of our interviews. My brain is just going bonkers because I don't know if we answered a lot of questions, because I still have a ton. But the good news is we get to work with you and the team through the Brain Revolution program, and it's an honor. And I can't wait to get to know you better and to really work with you to bringing this type of work to some of my clients and to friends, to my personal trainer, to my chiropractor. I'm just excited about expanding the reach of this. So I think you've already answered this question, but I have to ask you anyway, because we love to end on this note. Fallon, you've been awesome. Tell us, what does an empowered life mean to you?
And I love that that's your name, because that's been a word that I've been focusing in the last couple of years. And for me, it's really just to be empowered means that you are your true authentic self. You're living your true authentic purpose and vision, and you're able to spread that to people that are going to be able to do the same thing. So I've always had that cheerleader personality, which a lot of people that know me now are surprised that I wasn't a cheerleader. I was an athlete, and I was a brute on the soccer and lacrosse field. Like, you did not want to be playing against me. But I've just always been a natural cheerleader. But I can't cheerlead for people until I'm taking care of myself. And like I said, it's still a daily thing, and I'll be working on it for the rest of my life. But I've come a long way in a short amount of time, that there's no reason that people, especially in y'all's community, that are already doing so much of the hard work, like psychosocial, spiritual, which I hadn't tackled any of that before, like we've talked about previously. There's just so much opportunity for us to be our best self, and there's resources for us to be our best self so that we can be empowered and live the life that we want and the life that we deserve. And that's another key point too, is, you know, we are deserving and worthy no matter what we do or don't do, as long as we are being ourselves. So that's something that is important to me.
You are wise beyond your years, my dear, and it has been an honor to have you on the show today. Everybody, the Brain Revolution is coming. If you're going to be a part of the program, then you're going to get to know Fallon Jordan a lot more. Fallon, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. This is amazing.
Bye, everybody.